Digital Marketing Radio, episode 221. How to optimize your Facebook ads.
DigitalMarketingRadio.com.
Broadcasting live on the Digital Marketing Radio Facebook page, this is the weekly show that prizes actionable advice from today's top digital marketers. Catch up with all the previous shows at DigitalMarketingRadio.com.
The big interview with David Bain.
Hello, I'm David Bain, and today I'm joined by two marketing veterans who have joined together to create a VC-backed Facebook-first performance marketing agency and ad tech hybrid. Welcome to DMR, Peter Rutino and Jeff Goldenberg.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thanks for coming on, gents. Well, you can find these chaps over at abacus.agency. So I'm just going to fire questions here and see who answers first. I'm not sure who that's going to be, so let's go for it. So for the first thing I'm going to ask is, why Facebook advertising?
You want to start? I'll start. It's always the first, who's going to jump up first. Okay, so I've been using Facebook advertising for startup user acquisition for a long time now. My startup before Abacus was called Borrowell, and it was like an online lending platform. And we used Facebook extensively to find new customers and to retarget to existing ones. So working with Facebook Canada on this account, I got to really understand what's needed to get Facebook ads to perform and how to basically win the auction that goes on millions, if not billions of times a minute to figure out who gets what ad at what time. So really got fascinated with Facebook ads working on that project and wanted to basically create an agency, although we're not even super comfortable with that term, but to create an entity that's just working on amazing Facebook growth projects all day long and can basically become a think tank for acquiring on Facebook and understanding the emotions and the tricks and the tactics and strategies that winning companies use to acquire on that platform.
Great. I should say that it says, for viewers of the video rather than audio consumers, it says Peter and Jeff on the screen, but it's actually Jeff and Peter, really. So, Peter, I'll fire the next question at you, and that is, what is your second favourite online advertising network after Facebook?
And don't say Instagram.
Well, my background is in, I really kind of cut my teeth in Google advertising. So I had an agency previously that was kind of full service digital marketing agency. After we sold that, that's when we kind of decided to pivot and join forces with Jeff, and we kind of wanted to go the opposite angle to the full service model and go specialist, which is why we kind of chose Facebook. But the full service agency previously, we said we were full service, but really we kind of honed in on search marketing, doing search marketing really, really well. So I'll say my second favorite would be Google, because I've got the most experience and I know it works really well. So Google AdWords.
Ah, great. Okay, I wondered if you were going to sneak out of that question there as well, and I was going to come back to it as well, but you got it in there.
Always answer the question you want to answer.
Absolutely. So two politicians here. So obviously, what we're zeroing in on Facebook is, part of this conversation, obviously, because that's what your primary focus in is yourselves. But in terms of setting up a new campaign on Facebook, could you perhaps talk us through a few steps that you actually take that perhaps might be a little bit different compared with other people out there?
Yeah, I think we probably do a lot of the things that other people do, but we prioritize different things differently. Okay. The first thing we want to think about is what is the value proposition and who are the target buying personas. We want to know specifically who we think we have the best chance of selling to, not a broad group like 24 to 54 females, which everyone knows there's hundreds of segments within that group that have nothing to do with one another. So the first thing we like to think about is, what are the exact personas we're trying to target, and what is a Facebook targeting strategy to match those personas? How are we going to proxy for those personas or user behaviors online? And actually, depending on what country we operate in, there's different things we can do. For example, the United States has much lenient privacy laws compared to Canada. So we actually have a lot of options in the States that we don't have in Canada. The next thing we do, and I think this is what distinguishes us as a performance Facebook agency is that we tried to determine what digital conversions we're going to optimize for, and then put what's called the Facebook pixel onto those conversions. So basically, if you're going to, let's think of a lead. If someone's objective is to get the cheapest leads possible, we put the pixel on the confirm button or the thank you page of the lead form, and we can now attribute which lead form conversions were driven by which campaigns and at what cost. And what that does is it basically gives us a common denominator to all the things that we do. If it's this cost per lead, we'll measure the cost per lead against different campaigns, and we'll optimize towards the ones that produce the best result. And that's done by using the tracking pixel or the SDK if you're doing a mobile app. Then we'll start thinking about creative. And with creative, we don't want one idea that we test 50,000 different ways. We'd like 5 or 6 totally different ways of eliciting an emotion and a behavior with these people, and we want to test them against one another. So we start running things that look more like scientific tests than art projects to figure out which campaigns and which messaging works the best for each group.
So that's the bit that we see people get wrong quite a bit, especially large brands, is that they treat Facebook and other platforms as distribution for a core message or a core piece of creative that they've come up with, instead of treating Facebook like its own native platform to tell native stories and to create creative that's suited to that platform specifically. So say video, for example, vertical video works way better on Facebook than horizontal video, for example. Or if you're creating video, you want to create nice punch kind of videos with messaging that flashes up in vertical format, that kind of gets to the point very fast and is very engaging right away, because you've got to stop people's thumb. Right?
So are you targeting people on their mobile devices then by saying vertical video and saying thumbs?
Yeah, so a way higher percentage of people are ingesting Facebook on mobile than on desktop. In fact, in the 18 to 34 demographic, which is a pretty key demographic to just about everyone, close to half of the people, 47%, never use Facebook online, like never use it on desktop. So where even 3 years ago you wouldn't sacrifice the desktop experience for the mobile viewers, it's the exact opposite now. You don't want to sacrifice the mobile experience for the desktop users. And a lot of people are having an incredible amount of trouble coming to grips with this because they still see life in a vertical world. If you want the content to be native to vertical phones, you need to make vertical content. Instagram is a vertical, or at least a one-by-one medium. So you see all these trends towards people ingesting content on vertical. And we deal with creative directors all the time. They understand that everyone's ingesting content through mobile and that it makes sense to be vertical. They just can't wrap their head around it because their tricks and their tactics and their, everything they do to create vertical video horizontal video is different. So we're crusaders for vertical video, and we have case studies to show how it works better. And this mobile thing's not going away. It's look on the street and tell me if there's ever been sort of a consumer behavior revolution the same as mobile phones. I don't think you'd find one.
So what actual size then do you produce vertical video in? Is it 16 by 9 but vertically? Or obviously mobile devices? Sure.
I like 9 by 16, which is the opposite of 16 by 9. Yeah. But if you're, there's 2 things you can do. The one thing that we've had one client do is produce horizontal and vertical, and then we can segment the ad sets by device type and serve the right to both. Obviously, that's great because then the desktop guys get a native experience and the mobile guys get the native experience. Excuse me. The other thing is 1 by 1. So if you want something that looks fairly decent on both desktop and mobile, 1 by 1's pretty good, and it also works well with Instagram, which is 1 by 1 mainly. But it's not even the video itself. Like the ad unit itself with a vertical video on a mobile phone takes up about 130% of the screen, whereas the thumbnail for a horizontal video on a vertical device takes up, I don't know, maybe 20-25% of the screen. I've had people ask me if that unit must cost more, and the funny thing is they actually typically cost less. So everyone knows the world's changed. It's just a matter of them getting to start to look at it through the new lens and not the old lens, and I feel like that's where people are a little bit slow, is making these fundamental shifts that even 2 years ago were different.
And more recently, we've actually seen mobile screen resolutions change to 2:1. So do you think that in the future you'll be making videos which are 1:2 format?
Yeah, whatever people use is what we're going to have to produce for if we want it to look as good as it can, and that's something we'll just have to keep monitoring.
And you started off.
But the switch from like 9 to 6. Sorry.
Sorry, Jeff. You said the switch by 9:16. I think you were going to say.
I was just going to say the difference between 9:16 and 1:2 wouldn't be huge, so you'd probably be able to effectively use both aspect ratios in the same ad units.
Great. Okay. And you started off obviously by talking about buyer personas. Is that something that you develop off Facebook, or are there tools in Facebook that you use to evolve those personas before starting your campaigns?
Right. Well, I've spent a lot of time, probably 15 years, and so has Pete, working with startups. And when startups launch, they don't know what their personas are. It's 100% hypothetical. When a company is established and they have years and years of data, they can kind of know who their target market is by looking at the data. So that's the transition. You start with a guess of who would get the most value out of your value proposition, and as the data comes in, it's a living, breathing thing, and you adjust it. You're like, oh, we were really right about that one, but we were totally off about that one. And what changes often is not that you guessed the wrong person, just that the segmentation variable might change. So it's like, we thought we should split them on use case, but what we should have done was split them on geography because of X, Y, or Z, or reverse. So you start with a best guess. The way we do that is like, let's think of a whole ton of segments or use cases, and let's rate them on a scale of 100, how much value they get out of our value proposition. Let's see who scores 80 and above and try to figure out what they have in common. What we'll talk about later is a strategy called nail a niche, which is if you're launching something new, it's really important to hit a home run with a small group and then expand from there, then try to be everything to everyone, because the marketing gets too diluted. So that's something I think we'll talk about later on, but that's why the personas is really important. You want to find that one beachhead that needs the product and gets a ton of value and is going to buy it, doesn't mind paying, and will sing your praises to other potential clients.
So what about in terms of call to action? Because you mentioned that Facebook is a medium where people need to be thinking about sharing a story. So when you're sharing a story, how do you actually incorporate a call to action as part of that? So we think about it phase specific. We think of the top of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, and the bottom of the funnel. And we think about one of the things that's amazing about Facebook is it lets you directly connect those different stages together into integrated campaigns. Not integrated across multiple channels, but integrated within the same channel. So if we think of the top of the funnel, we think of problems and solutions that our users going to need to trust us and to convince them that A, they have the problem that we think they have, and B, that we're the right ones to solve it.
So the top of the funnel, what do I need?
Yeah, awareness. They didn't know we existed. They might have had the problem but not known it was one that they should be solving. So we really focus on explaining what we're all about. At the middle, we call it, the middle of the funnel, we call it demand generation, which is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to use features and testimonials and social proof to build demand for the solution we created to the problem that we were talking about.
So that's what do I need it? Why do I need it from you specifically? Consideration and preference.
And where's the value? Is there value? And then people who have interacted with the top of the funnel and the middle of the funnel are now ready to be sold to. So now you can come in with heavy CTA, direct response type stuff. And the number one reason people say Facebook doesn't work is because they come in with their direct response to a cold audience that might not even know about them, and that's not the right way to do it. If they're searching on Google and the intent is so close to the surface that all they need is to be nudged in one direction or another, that's one thing. Maybe the first time they find you, they can buy. But on Facebook, there's no intent. They didn't log in to be advertised to or to solve a problem. They logged in to keep in touch with family and friends, and we insist that needs to be handled specifically. It's not the same.
So are you saying on Facebook you should only ever have direct call to action ads to people who have previously interacted with your content?
It's a bit of an overstatement because, I mean, you could have call to action ads retargeting people that have been to specific pages on your website or interacted with your emails or your mobile app. So there's lots of times you would do it. But I think you'll find that if you're measuring a bottom of the funnel result, like a CPA, a cost per acquisition, or a cost per sale, or a cost per lead, you're going to do better by using an integrated campaign than a straight direct response campaign, unless your product is so good or your value proposition is so strong that it speaks for itself. But that's few and far between.
So what about costs for advertising on Facebook nowadays? It seems like many people, many agencies are recommending Facebook as a great place to be on from a marketing perspective nowadays. Does that not mean then that the costs for having advertising campaigns are a lot higher than they were a couple of years ago? And do you foresee costs to get a lot higher in the future?
I mean, I think that's inevitable. So the same thing happened with Google. To start with, you could get incredibly cheap cost per clicks, and then as more and more people come onto the platform, the demand goes up, cost goes up. Same thing with Facebook, more and more people coming on using the auction. You just have to be better and smarter with your marketing. And then in terms of how much you spend, you just need to work it into your financial model. So everything we do is geared towards hitting our clients' kind of main KPIs. So let's say if it's a B2B startup or something like that, we'll work with them to, they might know, but what the lifetime value of the customer is, what they can afford to pay per acquisition, and then we work the campaign back from there. So the target goal is hitting that CPA. So long as we can get at that CPA or within that CPA, it's good, and we can build a sustainable growth engine from there.
So
the expense comes if you're not tracking. The expense comes if you're not tracking at the bottom of the funnel and you're just spending. Because if you're just spending on awareness and amplification, that price is going to go through the roof, and you're going to get even less. If you're measuring at the bottom of the funnel, something that I know if I get more X, it's going to lead to more revenue. Then, as long as you're within the envelope of where that number needs to be, the auction will work in your favor. But it's definitely getting more competitive. The days where you can just set and forget are gone. We have to run experiment after experiment and after experiment in a very disciplined way to unlock the kind of growth that our clients expect. So it is a very different market.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of Facebook campaigns do you just see that you haven't set up yourself, that someone else has set up, that you just look at and you think, well, they're doing that wrong? What are the most common things that you see people doing wrong?
I mean, it's either we see incredibly complicated campaigns that need to be simplified, or incredibly basic campaigns that need to take a step up. And within that, there are just a myriad of things that people do wrong. So a classic example could be, we're taking on a startup and they're not spending very much. So there's Facebook's algorithm works off, say, if you're optimizing for conversions, you need a certain amount of conversions to make that auto-optimizer work. I think it's 25 a week, right, on every ad set. So if you're not spending enough to hit those conversions, Facebook just hasn't got the data to auto-optimize, and you're going to struggle. So what we do is push it back to link clicks, optimize for link clicks, and then once we've got enough data on that, we can push it back to conversions.
Great.
And there's a whole slew of things like that.
So talking about Facebook, we're broadcasting this live on Facebook, of course. Most people will be consuming this as an audio podcast, but we've got Kat, Michael, Amanda, and Amelia that have liked it. You're obviously sharing some good things there as well. If you guys want to leave any comments or any questions at all, then we'll try and review that while we're on here, and perhaps cover that a little bit later in the conversation here as well. But just maybe wrapping up the conversation about Facebook here. What is the future for Facebook ads? Are there some significant changes coming down the pike that we're going to see that most people aren't aware of?
This is literally Jeff's favorite topic.
There's a lot. Facebook doesn't get the credit for being as innovative as they are with their ad products, both in terms of benefiting the advertiser and not at the expense of the user, because if their users die off, then the advertising decreases too. There's going to be ads inside of Instant Messenger, so that's going to be really interesting. Not Instant Messenger, I'm showing my age. That's an AOL product, Facebook Messenger. There's going to be ads inside Facebook Messenger very soon. It's already being beta tested, so that's interesting.
They're doing location tracking, physical store tracking, which is coming out pretty soon. I think I did an article about that yesterday, but soon you'll be able to track from people seeing an ad to actually walking in your physical store, so say your Nordstrom or something like that. You can show ads and then see whether people have walked in based on the GPS data in the phone.
Jeff, I know you want to be sharing more, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the near future, in a like 5-year window, we'll be seeing Facebook TV and kind of buying on Facebook for TV and things like that. I mean, there's a whole slew of things coming down like that.
Yeah, Facebook just expanded the audience network to include mobile devices and apps. So now you can buy native app placement inside of apps through the Facebook audience network the same way you could buy through Google. So we're running some experiments to see how that media converts. We're always thinking about new creative, because creative really is the piece that's the biggest X factor. If an average Facebook ad has a click-through rate of, like, let's say 0.6%, you're going to get a really average result. But if you can figure out how to get 2 or 3% of the people that click on your Facebook, your costs per are gonna fly. So we're thinking all the times about, like, what's working now in terms of ad types. Is it video or static? Collections and dynamic ads. So you can have your ads change copy and images based on where people are. So someone in Detroit gets a different ad than someone in Los Angeles. There's all the stuff with the dynamic product feeds, which I'm sure you've seen, where an e-commerce store can upload their feed and then can retarget visitors with very specific ads, either the product that they didn't buy or related products to it. And those have been incredibly successful. I think in the immediate future, marketers need to figure out how to handle mobile, because so many of these shopping decisions are being made on mobile, both in-store and just anywhere. Going from a mentality of, like, search, which is like I'm looking for this, to more of a mentality that I'm always a potential purchaser, I'm always discovering new things. It's not only when I go shopping or search for something am I consuming and discovering, it's all the time now. And that's a different mindset.
And what about other social networks? I mean, Twitter, Snapchat, Pinterest, perhaps someone else. Is there any network that is going to become interesting from an advertising perspective over the next few years, do you think?
No.
Okay. You're not a politician. Well, I mean, you can answer in one word.
Currently, 1 in roughly 4 minutes on a mobile phone in North America is spent inside a Facebook product. So 25% of mobile use time is in Facebook, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, or WhatsApp. So that's equal to the 10 next most popular apps combined. So how much bigger, like, Facebook is mobile. Facebook and Instagram are mobile. When you think mobile advertising, it's basically Facebook mobile video advertising at scale. So, at some point there will be something that gets people's attention and it'll contend. But I mean, Facebook's ad products are a long time in the making. Snap is doing stuff now, but their ad products are way less mature than Facebook because they haven't had as much time. So things will pop up, but keep in mind it wasn't 2 years ago where Instagram was its own platform. It challenged Facebook. They bought it for $1 billion, integrated the front end that people were interested in with the back end advertiser targeting, and now you've got a $35 billion company. So Facebook has the means to develop or acquire sort of whatever becomes popular on the front end, which is a little bit of defense against other social networks just taking over. But you never know what will happen.
I mean, we're talking in the middle of August 2017, and Snap shares have taken a bit of a pummeling over the last few weeks. It's now at about $11 a share or something like that. Do you have any concerns about the future of Snapchat? Do you think that it will evolve successfully as a business by itself, or do you think it may be bought by someone else potentially?
I mean, it was gaining ground last year. I know, it's always been popular in the millennial demographic. It was starting to take the older demographic, and then Instagram/Facebook released their new feature, which was essentially Snapchat, and that demographic dropped off. From the kind of the research that I look at and the people that I talk to, it's losing ground. They are, rapidly trying to innovate and produce better ad products that advertisers can use. But in terms of user base, I just don't see there being a threat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's obviously not a question you can have a definitive answer to, but it's interesting to hear your perspective on things, certainly. So thank you for that.
I think if you're marketing to the millennial demographic, it's definitely something you want in your mix. There's no doubt that the attention graph spikes up for Snapchat. It's just, what the utility of advertising on that platform.
They're also targeting very high dollar advertisers, so it's not a mass platform yet. It's quite expensive, and the commitments are relatively large. Yeah. What's great about Facebook is you can run experiments for next to no money and look for areas to double down and scale, which I don't think is really available on Snap. But they're an early company. They're somewhat, very well capitalized. I'm sure they have smart people. They'll find their space. I just don't think you come to the social media battle with a solution that can be imitated by the big guys, because as we saw, a lot of people moved over to Instagram because their friends were on it already.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, well, in a moment we're going to be moving to the second part of a conversation where I'll be asking Peter and Jeff about the software that they couldn't live without. But first of all, dear viewer, dear listener, have you purchased your copy of Digital Marketing in 2017, the book yet? That is 107 digital marketers, all in one book, sharing their #1 actionable tip for the year. You can find out all about it over at digitalmarketingin2017.com. But let us segue into the second part of our discussion. So that focuses on Peter and Jeff's thoughts on where digital marketing has been and where it's heading. So starting off with
software I couldn't live without.
So gents, what software do you currently use in your business that if someone took away from you, it would significantly impact your marketing success?
So we have a pretty big stack of tools in the company. I'd say the two most important ones are, we use Workplace, Facebook Workplace. So that's their internal, no surprise. So that's their internal kind of management tool. So all of the team are on there. It's the chat tool. We have our various different groups like the creative ideas group, the optimizations group. We have our advisory board in there giving us advice. So it's a great tool, kind of central hub tying everybody together. And then the second one, pretty standard, Google Docs. We do everything in Google Docs. All of our, Word, Excel, spreadsheets, all of our account hierarchies, everything's in there. We pull our reports from there. So it's just a super useful tool. I would say third place runner-up would be our project management system. So that's Pulse. I've tried every task management and project management system in the last 7 years in the agency world, and this has kind of been the nicest in terms of visuals and workflow and simplicity. So it's got a good, everybody in the company uses it. It's got a good adoption rate.
Great, Pulse. I don't think I have heard of that one before. How do you actually spell that, just to make sure I can find it and link to it? Okay.
DAPLUSE.
ULSE.
Yeah.
DAPULSE.
Yeah.
You said Daplues. Pulse.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like the Pulse, but the Pulse for some reason.
We like to call it DP internally.
I think that maybe that was just a deliberate misspelling, just to completely confuse you. Okay, Jeff, I'll ask you the slightly more challenging question, and that is, what piece of software don't you use, but you've heard good things about and you intend to try at some point in the near future?
Yeah, it's a tough one. We're looking at what AI and machine learning can do for advertising. I mean, obviously, there's a ton of AI in Facebook's platform as is, but there's a whole startup world now around AI and data startups that are coming on board, and we're really curious to see how they work and test them out in the field. So one of the companies, they're local in Toronto. They're called Zoom.ai, and it's like an AI-driven, what would you call it?
Automated assistant.
An assistant, yeah. So I'd like to see, I'd like to try some of those tools and see if I can't streamline some of my routine processes to get a little more organized.
Do you think it's worthwhile many businesses considering building their own chatbot nowadays?
So there's two types of chatbots. There's chatbots that are sort of like decision tree based, where you could literally make them yourself and launch them. And I'm a huge proponent of those. And then there's chatbots that are going to be expected to learn and get better. And those ones are much more complex. So when I was at Borrowell, that online lending company, we launched a chatbot for customer service because we realized that 80% of the questions were the same 20% questions, and that we could detect if someone has rate or rates in the question, that they're probably looking for information on our rates and could really easily send them to a rate comparison page and a calculator and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I definitely think people should experiment with them. I think they're amazing. It's a great way to interact with a company.
It sounds like then if you're a company that have a big list of FAQs that are quite commonly asked, then that's possibly quite a good use of a chatbot.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I mean, Sephora has one that we heard about at a conference where, like, you can take a picture of a dress you're buying and the chatbot will send you back like the top 10 lipstick colors that'll match that dress. Like that wouldn't be an easy program to build. But if you were just trying to automate FAQ, you could do it.
Sorry.
And even if you have a step where, like, the questions you don't answer go to someone live, the amount of resources and the number of live attendants that you would need if you could take out the 80-20 questions is huge. So I know people are trying to get fancy, but like customer service, like, let's not skip over the basic stuff because the other stuff sounds cool. If you have a lot of people asking questions that could be answered by a bot, then why not?
I'm seeing more and more. It's probably a Shopify plugin or something, but e-commerce stores integrating direct with Facebook Messenger. I just ordered a T-shirt a couple of weeks ago, and they sent me all my updates through Facebook Messenger. And then if I typed in, what's happened to my package, where's my package, it would kind of recognize the keywords and send me an update through that. And those are just small stores, so super easy to integrate.
And keep in mind, in China, like, so much gets transacted over chat compared to here. So even though North America is typically like the tech leader and the user behavior leader that gets copied elsewhere, like, that doesn't mean it has to always be. And maybe that's the roadmap, is that we're going to do a lot more transacting versus chat interface than we think. And I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Lots of changes happening, but I'm sure even more are going to happen over the next couple of years. It's an exciting time. Okay, well, I'll include the links to your software recommendations in the show notes at digitalmarketingradio.com, but let's move on to...
I wish I would have.
So I'd like you to look back on the very first day that you're involved in trying to market a business online. What didn't you do so well? What do you wish that you would have done differently?
Okay, so I was in sales when I was younger, and I took a product for the company I was working for and started to sell it on 100% commission. I took it over to Australia, and I had to, as well as do the sales for it, I had to market the product, and did all sorts of things like PPC and tried to do SEO. And with PPC, it was, I spent a lot of money, didn't do it so well. Had no idea what I was doing, but I hacked my way to be able to do it. But I spent a lot of money in that period. So I wish I'd accelerated that, maybe by doing certifications, the AdWords certification, instead of just spending money to learn. I still really like the process of how I learned. I thought it was a great way to learn AdWords by spending real money and marketing a real product. But I probably could have spent a lot less money if I had gone through the certifications and things like that.
What about yourself, Jeff?
I think overall, I would have approached it more scientifically earlier on. Like, I realized later on that there's so many tools to allow you to test your hypotheses cheaply and quickly before investing deeper in them, and that the smart thing to do is to find out whether you're right as cheaply and quickly and then pivot if you're not. So I think I wish I would have understood the scientific process to building a startup earlier in my career. The other thing is, like, startup founders and marketers think they got to get a million things to work, and the fact of the matter is they need to get one thing to work really well. And the number one reason they're going to fail is because they don't get one thing to work, not that they didn't get 7 things to work. So now we look more at a process where we figure out a number of hypotheses, we go through them scientifically, and then we double down on the areas that are successful, and that's how we grow quickly. So it really is a process that I wish I had more understanding of earlier on.
Great thoughts, thank you. I see Michael Fleischner is watching live on Facebook. Hello, Michael, good to see you there.
Hello, Michael.
But let us move on to
the this or that round.
So this is the quick response round. So 10 quick questions. This is going to be interesting with both of you on this, but let's see how it goes. So
We agree on one.
2 rules here. Try not to think about the answer too much, and you're only allowed to say the word both on one occasion, so use it wisely. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm scared.
All set.
Nervous.
Okay. Twitter or Snapchat?
Twitter.
Twitter.
Facebook or LinkedIn?
Facebook.
Facebook.
YouTube or Facebook Live?
Facebook Live.
I'll say YouTube based on how much I watch.
Mobile or desktop?
Mobile.
Mobile.
Website or app?
Website.
Website.
Paid search or SEO?
SEO.
Paid search.
Outreach or advertise?
Advertise.
Advertise.
Email to one or email to many?
Email to many.
Email to one.
Social subscriber
Email
or
to
email
many, but
subscriber?
make it look like one.
Oh, email subscriber for sure. Social
Yeah.
subscriber, email subscriber.
Email subscriber.
And local marketing or global marketing?
That's a hard one.
Localized global.
Oh, we get to say both. We have one both.
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 Wow, okay. That's the button that I meant to press. And I think it was paid search or SEO that the major disagreement came in. So one of you definitively SEO, one of you paid search. Why is that?
So honestly, I love both. Normally what I'd do is I'd roll out a PPC campaign to start with, kind of look at traction, look at keywords, and then roll into SEO once you kind of see what's working. But SEO is just cheaper in the long run, more sustainable. The ROI is typically better when you compare the two.
Do you think that in the long term you still need both, or can you get to a stage where just SEO will suffice?
It's always useful to have both turned on. I looked at a study recently where they looked at people who ranked and they looked at people who were number one. So rank number one in organic, rank number one in paid. Let's say if you rank number one in organic and the click-through rate's 1 in 10, and then you rank number one in paid separately, and that's 1 in 10. They saw that if you rank number one in both, you didn't just double the click-through rate, it accumulates. So it's instead of say 2 in 10, it's 4 in 10 because you've got that brand kind of omnipresence. So I think it's useful to have both. I mean, PPC is always useful as well for brand protection, bidding on your own brand, experimentation, getting fast results. So generally speaking, I would say both, but I think SEO is definitely the long-term sustainable play.
Great, yeah, I like how you use generally speaking, because obviously you have to test and learn, and everything could be different for your business compared with other businesses out there as well. So don't spend money
Right.
unless it actually brings you a good result. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Well,
I mean, yeah, the worst thing you could do is say dedicate 6 months to SEO, having not seen that the keywords are actually money-making keywords, right? So PPC is just killer for that.
The $10,000 question.
so if I was to give you both, or individually, what shall I do? Both to give you $10,000 and you had to spend it over the next few days on a single thing to grow your business, what would you spend it on, and how would you measure success?
A single thing.
A single thing.
I know what I would do. Are we answering individually or together?
You can go first.
All right. So we have a little trick where, remember those buyer personas we talked about?
Sure.
Where we take the buyer personas on the vertical column and then put the buyer journey or the funnel on the left column and try to figure out what content is required for each persona at each stage of the buyer journey. I would take $10,000 and create content such that I had good content for each persona at each stage of the funnel, because that's something that I could use really effectively. And I'd love to start a project having amazing content that's funnel focused and persona based. And I would measure ultimately by an important revenue driving conversion to businesses like a lead or a sale. So
The thing that's working really well for us at the moment is content plus the kind of paid distribution of the content. Content works really well for SEO, but also kind of the inbound engagement and the Facebook advertising on the paid distribution end to get the targeted audiences that we want to see. Given that we have already got some great content on our blog, we've got some kind of lead bait set up and some white papers and good blog posts, I would probably just take that $10,000 and spend it on distribution for some existing blog posts that's performing the best.
I thought you were going to say spend it down the pub or something, but no, okay, that's
distribution. That too.
Okay, well that just about takes us up to
My number one takeaway.
So you've offered some great advice, gents, in the conversation so far, but can you distill it down to one takeaway? So what's the single most important step that our listeners just need to do just to take away an action within their own businesses?
So I work with a ton of startups, and I have for a long time. I mentored some accelerators like Techstars and 500 Startups and some of the bigger North American accelerators. So I get to be in a lucky position to see a lot of startups and follow their success. And I spend a lot of time thinking about what do these things have in common? What are the big lessons we can take away from seeing so many interesting startups? And the thing that I came to the conclusion of is that too many founders think by selecting a niche to nail at the beginning, they're limiting their business. When really, by selecting a niche to nail at the beginning, they're setting their business up for future success. So a couple ways to look at that. The first is like a video game. I think startups are like a video game, and you have to pass each level concurrently to set you up for the next level. You can't just go and save the princess on level 1. There's a whole bunch of things you need to do to get to that stage. And one of them is picking that first group of people who you're going to sell to, these early adopters. And the bigger your audience, counterintuitively, the bigger your audience, the more it's important to nail a niche. I had a video cooking show, and I was like, well, 50 million people in the States cook. Just push it out there and figure out who's going to use it, versus maybe this video cooking school is good for people who aspire to go to expensive cooking school but want to first make sure that they're into it and they really like it. So maybe that's the niche we should start at. It doesn't mean that I'm going to limit it to them or not go after the 50 million home cooks. It just means that the best way to ensure future success is to have one niche that really loves your product and is willing to talk about it. So my one advice would be to pick a small niche to nail at the beginning and trust that that's going to lead to bigger things down the road.
Okay, so just because you pick a small niche, you're not limiting your business to just focus on that niche for the long term. You can quite easily add additional niches.
What was Zuckerberg's first niche? What was Zuckerberg's first niche, like when he started Facebook?
Well, colleges, students.
Yeah, it was like Harvard people to meet girls.
Okay.
I assume at that point he had some inkling towards world domination, but he realized that starting it at Ivy League schools for something as basic as like meeting people. He even described it to that old site, Am I Hot or Not, where people used to rate photos for hours at a time.
Yeah.
I feel like he thought that by creating something that you needed an EDU account and it needed to be Ivy League, that if he won that niche, it would help him expand to other ones. And he did that very successfully.
That's a good example, and there's not much I can say in response to that. So,
yeah, that's the Facebook trump card.
What about yourself, Peter? Any other kind of last takeaway you'd want to add to yourself personally?
Yeah, I would just say, as much as possible, simplify things and focus on your key metric. At Abacus, we try and get our clients to tell us what their most important KPI is, and then we do everything we can to hit that. Too often people have they want to get more traffic and more impressions, they want to do this and get more reach. We really try and boil it down to what's the key metric that's going to really move the dial for your business, and then we focus on that. So simplify and track.
And why that's really important is because the AI with Facebook, the algorithm, is going to try to reverse engineer the objective that you tell it at the price that you tell them you're interested in getting the conversion for. So if you get that piece right, everything below goes Pete Tong.
Well, Pete Tong, I reckon that takes us up to the end of our discussion today. So thank you so much for your time and your advice. What's the best way for a listener to find out more about you and what you do?
So probably the best place is our website, abacus.agency.
Simple enough. Superb stuff.
Easy
Well,
as that.
yeah,
Cool.
thanks again for coming on. So,
Thanks for having us.
Peter and Jeff, great. If you'd like to, dear listener, if you'd like to share your opinion of what Peter and Jeff shared today, tell us what you think. So you can do that on the Facebook page. That's facebook.com/digitalmarketingradio. You can tweet me at David Bain. And remember to subscribe to the podcast if you're not already. So you can do that at digitalmarketingradio.com/iTunes for iPhones or digitalmarketingradio.com for Android devices. But until we meet again, be fantabulous and do one thing that scares you. Adios.